Hello, Stephen White, Steve Arts 89 here. I did a video about my vintage Star Trek motion picture merchandise, and I thought I may as well do one about some of the later merchandise that I've collected, which I love because I love Star Trek the motion picture. This is mostly for other Star Trek fans that I just wanted to show they might not have seen some of the merchandise. Some things I've seen recently online I didn't know about that I was really happy to see other people show off. So yeah. In the 90s, Star Trek, Marvel did a Star Trek Untold Voyages, which was basically Tales from the Second 5-Year Mission. It was unfortunately it was only 5 issues, one for each year of the second 5-year mission after Star Trek the Motion Picture, which we sort of heard about. Now it literally takes off directly after Star Trek the Motion Picture finishes, and the art was quite good, and everything is the motion picture era, lots of ads, and I really enjoyed it. They did 5 issues, as I said, and it was great. I'm not going to go all the way through into a proper review. And there's also the Waypoint issue where they did they did their version of Phase 2, which of course we all know would have been the Star Trek series instead of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now, the Star Trek collection was a DVD, part works, weekly or fortnightly book and DVD and magazine, and they did Star Trek the Motion Picture, where they basically used the Star Trek magazine, Fact Files magazine, information from that, which they compiled into a magazine. And they also had an article on the motion picture. I think it was the director's edition. So that was nice. Yeah, it's about the effects of the director's edition. So that was done around the 30th anniversary, and I grabbed that. Already had the DVD, but had a slightly different cover, and it came with the magazine. Now, Star Trek the magazine did an edition of a special edition, which was mostly articles about Star Trek the motion picture, about the production, the effects, the director's edition. It had some of the same graphics and that created for the fact files, and it was just a nice little supplementary book that was sort of like another little, well, there was never an official movie magazine for Star Trek the motion picture, just like there was never a comic book adaptation of Star Trek 2. So it was nice to have just a little additional magazine on the film. And Star Trek Communicator did a tribute to Star Trek the motion picture with a bunch of articles, which it's hard to find. That wasn't the whole magazine, this is mostly that, and they had ads for the director's edition, which was new at the time. And then I think for the 30th anniversary, the later incarnation of Star Trek magazine, Star Trek Monthly or whatever it was called, did a similar special edition where they focused on the 30th anniversary of the motion picture, and I kept that. I don't have a lot of those magazines. I used to collect them, and I got rid of most of them, and they're mostly just digital editions or scans or PDFs now. Now this was the Starships collection, where it's the refit Enterprise, so I kind of consider it a piece of Star Trek the motion picture merchandise, and it's got some images from the motion picture, and of course that's when it was designed, so it focuses on the production of Star Trek the motion picture, where it was created. And then we come to reprint land. So first off, I guess, go in order. we have the IDW Omnibus, which reprinted the Star Trek the motion picture era comic book series, which is, where's my favourite cover? Oh, that's right, it starts off. It skips the actual comic book adaptation of the movies, which is the first 3 issues, and starts from the 4th issue, which is The Haunting of Thalos, which literally has a haunted house on an asteroid in the middle of space. It's pretty awesome. I loved it. I have had the originals, and I bought the Star Trek comic book collection, which had scans which were as good or better than the copies I had. So I just kept that, and I bought this. And since I had a print copy and a digital copy of the original, I got rid of the originals. And the remastering is okay, but it does kill some of the lighter tones, and the lines are a lot deeper. The ink is a lot darker. So this does everything from issue 13 through to, I think they did 16 or 18 issues. And they're all pretty much the same. A lot of the lighter tones are gone. Yeah, they did 18 issues. And the art did vary, but it was fairly consistent. And it's just nice to have something from that era, because most of the DC comics were from the Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, Final Frontier, Star Trek 6. And here we have the Omnibus of the Movie Classics, which has the motion picture adaptation, which is remastered as well. They're all remastered, actually. They're all the remastered comic books from the original adaptations from the era. And same thing. Bit of contrast, very dark lines, a lot of the lighter colours, some of the grey uniforms are basically white. But it looks okay. I've got a reprint of it, which looks a lot better. I mean, I've got an original comic book adaptation of it, which looks a lot better. But it's nice to have that as well. And then the graphic novel collection, reprinted the same, but they're doing all of it. The comic book adaptation through to the episodes, the novels. Oh God, the comics from the first issue right through, and it's basically the same quality as the omnibus. Here we have, where is The Haunting of Thalos? I want to get to the first page. Come on. There. Unfortunately, they don't have the covers in the book. I think they're at the end in the cover gallery. Which is fine as if it's a graphic novel. But if they're individual comics, I want to see the covers too. But this also at the back had pictures from Star Trek Motion Picture. Some of which I'd never seen before. So it was like a little photo gallery of promotional art, along with the covers. So I think it's going to take 3 or 4 parts to finish that off, and I'm going to get all those as well, because even though they're basically the same as the omnibus, they are a little bigger, and they do seem to have that little bit of additional content. And then last but not least is the newspaper comic strips. Now these were reprinted in 2 giant volumes, and these ran from 79 to 83 into the Star Trek II era. but they're mostly, they've got some the introduction and some little supplementary test comic strips, and basically they're just long stories spread over lots and lots of days or weeks of comic book strips which are appeared every day in the LA Times, and they've collected them all as individual stories, and they're just printing them like that, and they do go through and list them. It's about 20 altogether, I think, and it's about 10 in each volume. And because they were black and white on the weekdays, and I think only colour on the Sundays, some of the pages are colour, some are black and white, some are half black and white and colour. And it was just amazing to me to see quality motion picture era comic book artwork. And I sat down, I managed to get, I think, 1 or 2 days together on a weekend. I just read the first volume when I got it, and then the whole second volume when I got it. And being a huge fan of the motion picture, and it's the only film that looks like it, the only film that had that production, because it changed after Star Trek 2. Not necessarily for the better, I don't think, always. I never liked the red military uniforms. I think the grey motion picture ones needed a bit of colour, but I think the actual design was good. It's just the colour that didn't work. So if they'd been charcoal pants with coloured tops, or grey and black with coloured bibs or whatever, like they originally had designed to do them that way, it would have looked a lot better. A couple of little changes. They could have made a series and kept the basic look of the motion picture. It would have worked just as well as the original series. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but you get the idea. There's a lot of really nice artwork, and in colour, and black and white. I had a great time reading it, because as you can see, it's quite dense. I worked out the equivalent of how many like comic books, American monthly 24-page comic books, it would have worked out to be, because it's about 250 pages. There's a little bit of extra stuff at the back. The McDonald's and motion picture stuff, and I wish they'd had these printed a little bigger, perhaps sideways, so they'd basically be life size. And inside it's just black. So that was amazing to find out they were going to be releasing that, and then to actually get it. And the second volume started off as good. Basically the same, a little bit of an introduction, some more of the artwork that's submitted by the artist to obviously apply for work. And then we get the second 20 stories, and basically the same idea. You get every page, every spread has some colour and black and white at the beginning, and it's gorgeous. And there's a story that basically introduced the Borg, which Next Gen kind of copied. And there's a few other little things like that which you just cover, which are very interesting. Some of the things that end up in Next Gen were in this. But I guess they owned them ultimately. And some characters from the animated series reappear, one of the races. And that was specific to the animated series. Unfortunately, just after the Star Trek 2 era, they changed the uniforms, and unfortunately the art quality dropped fairly badly, and it went to fully black and white, which is a pity, because up until then the quality had been very good, but it went down really bad. But then it picks up again, and the last section of art is just as good as the rest, but there is no more colour, which kind of grates a little bit when you're reading it. And it does have a fairly long lexicon at the back, and a lot of additional information and things that relate to the characters and stories and everything. So that was amazing. Despite the temporary drop in picture art quality, it was still a great read, and I'm so glad they did it, because I'd been curious of them for years. I'd heard about them for years, that there were these comic strips that we'd never seen, UK and American for the motion picture, and the original Star Trek as well. And finally got to see them and read them, and I really immersed myself in them and really enjoyed reading them. And hopefully someone watching this who wasn't sure about getting them might actually be convinced from having a look that they really are worth owning. So if you get them, enjoy them. Thanks, bye.